Let's go Dolphins! Unfortunately, we're heading into the end of the season, and the Miami Dolphins find themselves at a critical juncture, teetering on the brink of another disappointing season with lingering questions about leadership at the top. At the heart of the controversy is General Manager Chris Grier, whose tenure has become a lightning rod for debate among fans and analysts alike. This talk isn't new. Calls for Grier's firing have been echoed since the Dolphins' rebuild began in 2019. However, recent events have reignited those discussions, with many now calling for a fresh start for the franchise. Now I want to hear from you. If you agree that Chris Grier should be fired, hit the like button. If possible, write this: the Miami Dolphins need to make changes. One of the most glaring criticisms has been Grier's roster construction over the years, especially through the NFL draft and free agency. A comprehensive analysis of his moves paints a mixed picture, at best. While there have been notable successes, players like Christian Wilkins and Jalen Waddle stand out. The number of missed opportunities and questionable decisions far outweigh the successes. From drafting Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert in 2020 to trading for Solomon Kindley, who is no longer in the league, the list of missteps is long. Fans point to other teams that have successfully built around their quarterbacks, contrasting Miami's struggles. The Eagles, for example, surrounded Jalen Hurts with a stout offensive line and elite weapons, leading him to the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, Tua had to compensate for a subpar offensive line that was repeatedly forced into a rushing passing attack to avoid relentless pressure. Grier's approach to free agency also raises questions. Many high-profile signings under his leadership have underwhelmed or failed to provide long-term solutions. Contracts were handed out to players like Jordan Howard, Shaq Lawson, and Will Fuller, only for them to be released or moved on shortly after. This revolving door of talent leaves fans asking, what is the long-term vision? Even trades that initially seemed promising, like the acquisition of Tyreek Hill, have been criticized for the impact on cap space and the inability to shore up other critical areas like the offensive line. Beyond the draft picks and free agency decisions, recent developments have cast doubt on Grier's communication and leadership. Reports surfaced that Shaq Barrett's interest in coming out of retirement to play for the Dolphins was communicated to Grier but not passed on to head coach Mike McDaniel or defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. This lack of coordination within the organization highlights dysfunction at a fundamental level. When coaches are left in the dark about potential roster moves, it's hard to imagine the franchise operating as a cohesive unit capable of competing at the highest levels. The issue isn't isolated to one season or one bad decision. The Dolphins' rebuild began in earnest in 2019, yet here we are in 2024, still questioning the direction of the team. Grier has had ample time and resources to construct a competitive roster, including multiple first-round picks and significant cap space. Despite these advantages, Miami's performances against top-tier teams remain lackluster. A recurring theme under Grier's tenure is the team's inability to rise to the occasion in critical games. Whether it's shrinking under pressure against playoff-caliber opponents or struggling in cold-weather environments, the Dolphins' shortcomings appear systemic. One particularly painful flashpoint is the handling of Tua Tagovailoa's development. Critics argue that the team has failed to build an infrastructure suited to his strengths and limitations. While Tua has battled injuries and scrutiny, the organization's focus on flashy skill players over a solid offensive line has exacerbated his challenges. Comparing this to other young quarterback situations, like Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts, it's clear that Miami's approach has not positioned Tua or the team for sustained success. With the season slipping away and the franchise's future hanging in the balance, fans are left wondering how much longer ownership will allow Grier to steer the ship. The decision to part ways with Brian Flores while retaining Grier remains a sore point for many, especially given the similar flaws that have persisted under new head coach Mike McDaniel. The debate now centers on whether McDaniel should be given a chance under a new general manager or if a full reset, including the coaching staff, is necessary. The Miami Dolphins find themselves under the microscope once again, and this time it's not just the analysts or media piling on. The players, the fans, and even opponents are joining the conversation. Stephen A. Smith, never one to hold back, delivered a scathing critique of the Dolphins on First Take following their disappointing Thanksgiving loss to the Green Bay Packers. For Dolphins fans, the critique cut deep, not because it was unfair, but because it rang painfully true. The inability to perform in cold weather has become more than just a narrative, it's a pattern that continues to haunt this team, and Thursday's game was another chapter in the same frustrating story. Smith's central point? The Dolphins' glaring weakness in cold weather games. Over the past 12 games played in temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the team has failed to secure a single win. It's not just bad luck or a coincidence, it's an indictment of the team's roster construction, philosophy, and execution. When the temperature drops, Miami's speed-centric style of play falters. The offensive line struggles to impose itself, and quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's arm strength becomes a liability in the heavy, chilly air. Against Green Bay, these weaknesses were on full display. From missed tackles to offensive struggles in critical moments, the Dolphins seemed unprepared, both physically and mentally, for the challenge. It's not as though the warning signs were absent. Fans and analysts have long pointed to the lack of physicality as a key issue for Miami. Jalen Ramsey himself entered this season declaring that the Dolphins would focus on toughness, aiming to silence critics who have called them soft in the past. Yet, when it came time to prove it, the team faltered. They've now added Green Bay to a growing list of cold weather losses, which includes powerhouses like Buffalo, Kansas City, and Baltimore. If Miami wants to compete in the AFC, it must solve the cold weather riddle. That's not just hyperbole, it's the reality of postseason football, where games in December and January are often played in frigid conditions. Thursday's loss went beyond the scoreboard. It was about pride, or rather, the lack of it. Green Bay players openly mocked the Dolphins after the game. Running back Josh Jacobs summed it up bluntly, "Them guys looked cold." This wasn't just a jab. It was a window into Miami's struggles. When opponents sense that a team isn't comfortable or prepared for the elements, it fuels their confidence. Packers players were reportedly saying on the sidelines that Miami didn't want to be there, and the game reflected that sentiment. 20 missed tackles led to nearly 160 yards for the Packers, a glaring failure in the basics of football. Even more disheartening was the Dolphins' inability to capitalize on the opportunities they had. Short yardage situations exposed the offensive line's lack of strength at the point of attack, and the defense's soft performance amplified frustrations. When asked about Miami's struggles in cold conditions, Green Bay's Xavier McKinney didn't mince words, saying, "It affected their whole team. They're coming from Miami, it's hot out there, and then you come here to play in this cold weather. You get affected by it." For Dolphins fans, hearing this from an opponent adds salt to the wound. The critiques aren't limited to the players. Head coach Mike McDaniel has found himself under fire as well. Some, like analyst Emmanuel Acho, have pointed to McDaniel's philosophy as a fundamental issue. While McDaniel is widely regarded as a brilliant offensive mind, his approach hasn't translated into the type of toughness needed to win critical games late in the season. The players are a reflection of their coach, Acho said, adding that McDaniel didn't appear prepared for the conditions. That's a damning assessment, especially when the entire football world is questioning whether the Dolphins have the mental and physical toughness required to succeed in the postseason. As fans look ahead, the question looms, can the Dolphins fix these issues in time to salvage the season? With 5 games remaining, the path to the playoffs is narrow. Their schedule, which includes matchups against teams like the Jets and Texans, offers some hope. But even if Miami makes the postseason, the reality remains, unless they find a way to win in cold weather environments, their playoff run is likely to end in disappointment. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the frustration among fans is palpable. Now it's your turn. What do you think the Dolphins need to do to finally shake this cold weather curse? Can roster changes or coaching adjustments make the difference, or are the Dolphins destined to remain stuck in this cycle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll dive deeper into this ongoing saga in part 2.